The first sign that something was wrong was not an explosion. It was silence. No distress call, no emergency broadcast, no warning shot lighting up the night sky. Just two massive oil tankers moving slowly through the Gulf of Oman, toward a blockade they had already been warned not to cross. And somewhere above them, an American fighter jet was already descending. Not toward a military base, not toward a missile site, toward the smokestacks. Because this was not a strike designed to sink a ship, it was designed to stop one. And what happened next revealed something much bigger than a single interception at sea. It revealed how far the confrontation around Iran had already escalated, without most of the world fully realizing it. According to reports from multiple outlets including the War Zone, U.S. Navy A-18 Super Hornets operating near the Strait of Hormuz targeted Iranian-linked tankers attempting to challenge an American-enforced maritime blockade. And the way they did it looked almost unreal. For weeks, tension in the Gulf had been building quietly. American warships were already spread across the region. Destroyers, carrier groups, surveillance aircraft, mine-clearing operations. Officially, the mission was maritime security, but in practice, it had become something much larger. A pressure campaign designed to choke off Iranian shipping routes and restrict movement toward key ports. And then came the warnings. Ships attempting to enter or leave certain Iranian-linked routes were being stopped, redirected, or boarded. Some complied, others didn't. Then the encounters became kinetic. An Iranian-linked tanker reportedly had its rudder disabled by cannon fire from a U.S. Navy Super Hornet after ignoring repeated warnings. But what happened afterward raised the stakes dramatically. Because this time, the Navy didn't just fire warning rounds. They used precision-guided bombs. Witness accounts and military reporting described two Iranian-flagged tankers moving through the Gulf of Oman despite the blockade remaining active. Above them, an F-A-18 Super Hornet launched from the USS George H.W. Bush was already in position. Now understand how unusual this is. A Super Hornet is designed for high-intensity warfare, air combat, strike missions, suppression of enemy air defenses. It carries precision-guided weapons designed to destroy hardened targets. But here, the mission wasn't destruction. It was surgical disablement. According to the reports, the pilot targeted the smokestacks and engine exhaust structures of the vessels using precision munitions. That matters for one reason. If you destroy propulsion without detonating the cargo area, you stop the ship without creating a massive environmental disaster. And that level of targeting requires extraordinary precision. At first glance, hitting a smokestack sounds strange, but military planners understood exactly what they were doing. The smokestack is connected directly to the ship's engine exhaust and propulsion systems. Damage that structure correctly, and the vessel loses mobility. No engines, no maneuverability, no escape. And unlike striking the hull, it minimizes the chance of catastrophic fire spreading through fuel compartments. In other words, the strike was designed to immobilize, not sink. That distinction matters politically, because sinking a commercial tanker in the Strait of Hormuz could trigger an international economic shock overnight. Stopping one? That sends a message without immediately detonating global oil markets. And this is where the story changes, because the tankers themselves may not have been the primary objective. The real target was perception. The United States was demonstrating that the blockade was no longer theoretical, no longer diplomatic language, no longer symbolic enforcement. A carrier-based fighter jet had now physically disabled ships attempting to challenge it. And once that happens, every shipping company in the region starts recalculating risk. Insurance companies react, oil traders react, governments react. Because now the question becomes, how far is this willing to go? The F-A-18 Super Hornet has been one of the backbone aircraft of the U.S. Navy for years. Fast, carrier-capable, multi-role. But what's happening now shows something different. These jets are no longer being used only for traditional combat. They're being used as tools of maritime enforcement, precision pressure, strategic signaling, and increasingly, economic warfare. Recent operations in the region have shown Super Hornets conducting everything from low-altitude strafing runs to precision interdictions against maritime targets. That shift matters because it blurs the line between military operations and economic control. And in modern geopolitics, those lines are disappearing fast. Everything keeps coming back to one location. The Strait of Hormuz, one of the most important shipping choke points on Earth. a narrow corridor through which enormous amounts of global energy traffic move every day. And when military operations intensify there, the entire world pays attention. Even small disruptions can affect oil prices, shipping costs, global supply chains. That's why every movement in the region is being watched so closely right now. Because history shows that escalation in the Strait rarely stays contained. But this incident feels different for another reason. The visuals. The idea of a Navy fighter jet flying low over commercial-sized tankers and placing precision strikes directly into propulsion structures sounds less like modern diplomacy, and more like something from a Cold War naval confrontation. Except this isn't the Cold War. It's happening now. And according to military reporting, this was already the third known kinetic interdiction involving Iranian-linked vessels during the current blockade enforcement operations. That suggests something important. This is no longer isolated. It's becoming operational routine. And underneath all of this, a much larger transformation is happening. Modern warfare is increasingly about control without invasion, pressure without occupation, disabling systems instead of destroying cities, and maritime choke points are becoming central battlefields again. Not because nations want total war, but because controlling movement can achieve strategic goals without crossing the threshold into full-scale conflict. That's why this story matters. Not because two ships were stopped, but because of what it reveals about the future of military power. Fast, precise, economic, psychological. A fighter jet dropping bombs into smokestacks is not just a tactical event. It's a signal. The ships didn't sink. The strait didn't close. And the world kept moving. But something changed in that moment. Because the image of a Navy strike fighter disabling commercial tankers in one of the world's most sensitive waterways sends a message that reaches far beyond the Gulf of Oman. It tells every nation watching that maritime pressure is no longer theoretical, and once enforcement reaches this level, the next step becomes much harder to predict. Subscribe to Cobalt.